Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the world of alcohol addiction, a topic that is just so deeply misunderstood. We're going to break down why that common phrase, just stop, completely misses the mark.
So, here's the plan. We'll kick things off with the core problem, that unstoppable thirst. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the brain chemistry. After that, we'll look at two big competing theories. Is it a disease or something else? Then we'll uncover a really surprising truth about recovery, and I'll leave you with one final question to think about.
All right, let's jump right in with the one question that seems so simple, but is actually incredibly complex. It's a question that often creates this huge gap in understanding between people who've been through addiction and those who haven't.
You hear it all the time, right? Why can't they just stop? It sounds like it should be a simple matter of willpower, just making a choice. But if you look at the actual biology, a totally different story starts to unfold.
This quote from Dr. Nicole Laborde, it just hits the nail on the head. She frames this not as a moral issue, but as a biological war between two parts of your brain, your ancient, survival-driven midbrain and your modern, logical frontal cortex.
Think about it. When that survival brain is screaming for relief, the feeling is just as powerful, just as urgent as dying of thirst. It literally hijacks your decision-making. And in that moment, the rational part of your brain, the part that cares about your family, your job, your health, it gets knocked offline. The need just takes over everything.
Okay, so how in the world does the brain get to that point? To really get it, we need to look at the chemistry, the actual mechanics that create this powerful survival-level drive.
So the best way to picture your brain is like a scale, one that's always trying to stay perfectly balanced. This is a principle called homeostasis. Your brain doesn't want to be too high or too low. Its happy place is right there in the middle, perfectly level. So you have a drink, and that alcohol comes in and artificially slams the scale down hard on the pleasure side. Well, your brain is designed to fix this. It starts fighting back, piling on its own weights, things like stress hormones, onto the pain side to try and get things level again. The problem is, when the alcohol wears off, all those weights on the pain side are still there, and that leaves you in this awful deficit state. You feel anxious, irritable, depressed. And at that point, you're not even drinking to feel good anymore. You're just drinking to feel normal again.
And that right there is the trap. As the neuroscientist Judith Grisel puts it, there is no free lunch. For every single high a drug gives you, your brain creates an equal and opposite low. And that low, that's what fuels the intense, desperate craving to use again.
Now, when you look at all these really intense biological changes, it's no surprise that the most common explanation for addiction for a long time has been the disease model.
And this biological evidence has really led us to two main theories, which you can see here. They offered totally different ways of looking at the problem and, well, the solution. So first, let's talk about the one you've probably heard of, addiction as a disease.
And the disease theory became so popular for a lot of good reasons. It really seems to explain the most confusing parts of addiction, right? Like, why can some people have one drink and stop while others can't? Why does it seem to run in families? And maybe the most baffling thing of all, why can someone be sober for a decade and then one drink can send them spiraling right back? It all points to something being different, maybe even broken, in the brain.
But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if those huge changes we see in the brain aren't a sign of a broken system, but a sign that the brain is doing something it was designed to do, just a little too well?
This brings us to the second idea, this deep learning model. It basically suggests that addiction isn't a disease at all. It's an extreme but completely natural form of habit formation. The brain is just learning a lesson and learning it incredibly well. So from this perspective, the brain isn't broken or defective. It's actually working perfectly. It's creating these super fast, super efficient pathways to get to a goal. The tragedy, of course, is that the goal itself is incredibly destructive. The brain has just become a world-class expert at a very, very bad habit.
And this change in thinking, from a broken brain to a learning brain, well, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. It points to a really surprising and honestly incredibly hopeful reality about what recovery looks like for most people.
Which brings us to this number. And I gotta tell you, this might be one of the most surprising and under-discussed facts in the entire field of addiction. That's right. Big, major studies have found that a huge majority of people, as many as 3 out of 4, who recover from alcohol addiction do it completely on their own. No rehab, no formal treatment program. They just Stop. And this just shows you that there's no single path to recovery. It's not one size fits all. For so many people, it's a deeply personal journey. Maybe it's finding a new group of friends, a sober tribe. Maybe it's diving into books and learning everything you can. Or maybe it's just about changing the story you tell yourself and making a deep personal promise to build a different life. So after going through the biology, looking at these two very different theories, what are we supposed to make of all this? Where does this leave us?
In the end, maybe it doesn't matter so much what we call it, a disease, a learned habit, whatever the label. If we know the brain goes through these huge changes, but we also know that for most people, recovery is not just possible but likely, doesn't that mean the hope we offer is way more important than the specific label we use? That might be the most important takeaway of all.